Good evening, one and all. Thank you for joining us again on another episode of Real Talk Family Life, building shatterproof families one brick at a time. This program is brought to you by Faith Tabernacle and Caribbean Evangelical Ministers. My name is Sasha Sutherland, your host for this evening, and I'm excited because we've been talking a lot about relationships and communication and doing good for the gospel, which is basically witnessing being Jesus with skin on in our relationships this year. Tonight, we're moving slightly away from direct instruction on topics to engaging with some of the questions, scenarios, and queries that you've submitted to our ministry team. So as usual, we encourage you to engage with our panelists via Zoom or YouTube as we spend the next hour addressing some of your queries. Tonight, we're joined by Pastors Anthony Henry and Joseph Griffith, Bishop Gavin Gowrie, and soon to be joined by Dr. Seneca King, all of whom are excited. We are excited to invite for Bible-based instruction this evening. It is going to be kind of engaging. I'm going to read out scenarios, the issue, the impact, not the Bible-based resolution, but the action that has been taken by the particular person submitting the query. And then we're going to ask you to guess if this was a male or a female. We're just doing a bit of gender research on who might have submitted that question. And then we'll let you know if it was a male or female that submitted the question, and we'll jump straight into our panelists weighing in. So without further ado, just checking YouTube, I am going to jump right in. So our first scenario, my partner or my spouse shares too much information. I've spoken to them countless times. I've explained that I feel exposed. And so with no limited change or no change, I've started sharing less with my partner. It's kind of like keeping things from them, which I know is not healthy for a relationship, as it's almost tantamount to keeping secrets. My action, I've not really ignored the behavior. I just keep reminding my spouse about privacy. Can the audience guess? Am I male or am I female? You can use the chat function to guess. Let me pull it up. My spouse talks too much. I've spoken to them about discussing our private matters. I've seen no change. I'm keeping secrets. So it's tantamount to keeping secrets. I've not ignored the behavior. I just keep reminding them about privacy. Am I male or female? I see one answer. Let's see if there's anyone on YouTube. Okay. I am actually female. Thank you for guessing. So who wants to go first from our panelists? Bishop Gowrie, because we missed you so much and we had a
Reason that's among my 35 questions, Pastor.
Well, what happened is we had Pastor Griffith and Pastor Henry on last week. So we're just going to give you, 30 seconds to weigh in. What do I do here?
Normally, I think that might be a problem you more expect a woman to have, but there is a telegram, telephone, and telewoman was the three ways of communicating. And a man with such a past, a man with such a situation, one of the basic ways to deal with problems as a couple, and most people don't do it, is to go back to Matthew 18. If your brother, you have to treat your wife or your husband as a brother in the Lord. Firstly, that's what they are. And if when you speak to them, it does not bring any fruitfulness, you don't bring the nuclear bomb solution, all right, or some of those things that we do. You get one or two witnesses and you speak to them again, that every thought and every principle can be established. Not two of your good friends that will back you up, but two of your people who can say, well, okay, I agree, or okay, I disagree, or this is what the Bible says, etc. And if you don't listen, then you take them to the pastor. And if you don't listen, then after the Bible says things like that. So sometimes the problem we have is that simply we ourselves, not only is our spouse involved in doing something that is disruptive to the relationship, but we are also in disobedience because we have not followed the principle of scripture to resolve conflict. And the reason the Bible gives for resolving conflict is not that you would win or monkey will know which tree to climb up, as I hear some people say, but for you to win your brother and sister. And that's what the Bible says. So when people, so conflict is not supposed to make you lose a relationship totally. That was not the intent. God says offenses have need but must come. And these are the things that test our relationship. And unless it is something that is worthy of a nuclear solution, I don't suggest a nuclear solution, but I suggest that you can escalate the situation by talking to that person with two mature people in the house of God. They will, now if it has to go up the ladder, then if as a counselor, all right, I would then look back in his life to find out what are the factors that would have brought that into his or her life. Because when you start looking at people from the point of cause and effect, you see them differently. You know, when you look at them in that Luke chapter 4, verses 18 to 21, you understand they've been bruised, they have been hurt, they have been lost their vision. You realize that sometimes the people they use communicating people, they traffic in people's secrets to make them get themselves feel a sense of importance, to feel relevant, etc. So that sometimes a talking man or an over-talking wife might be some simpler fact that they don't feel as though they're involved in anything of quality. And therefore, they talk people business all over the place. As I say, great people talk about concepts and ideas. Lower level people spend them talking about people business, etc. So that's my 2 cents.
I like the fact, well, not the fact, I like your comment about them not feeling involved in issues, and that might be one of the reasons why they're talking. So it's not so much as you say, the person doing something simply because they want to be unjust to the partner, but the fact that there is perhaps a behavior that's triggering that response as well. So looking through each person through cause and effect, I love that. So Pastor Griffith, Pastor Henry, or Dr. King, any of you want to weigh in on this one? Pastor Griffith, unmute your mic.
I'm very much, good night. I'm very much aware of situations where men, for example, men who would beat up on women and tell them, don't tell anybody their business. So I might be in a little bit funny position when I'm trying to understand what is the kind of business that is actually being told, all right? And I'm agreeing that there are some things that really belongs to family and should not be broadcast. And any man who finds himself, or any partner who finds himself in a position broadcasting things that really are private and only suit for the family, find himself in a serious position. So I can understand if this is really happening, why some person would not want to say it. It is something that you do not want to encourage, and something would have to be wrong if the person is validated. In other words, he's in fact, or she's in fact saying things that ought not to be broadcast outside. I don't know what level of maturity, but I'm saying that the relationship is seriously threatened and something needs to happen urgently. They cannot continue to exist and she holding secrets and probably holding secrets with information that should be shared. So perhaps they need talking, don't seem to be doing a job, but can they get counsel? They should. If not, I'm afraid it don't look good for me. I pause.
Dr. Sutherland, good evening. Good evening, everybody. I smile at this question because the people who are most guilty of doing this kind of a behavior is preachers. They like myself, would get into the pulpit and share things that are personal. And oftentimes when you get home, you hear, but why are you preaching about our business? And I mean, let's admit it, it happens to us as preachers. It used to happen many years ago to me as an individual. And what I would think is genuine, and I think that there could be a gender issue here, because some women tend to be more private with certain things than men. And I think that sometimes what men would generalize, women may see it as dear to their hearts. Don't talk about that. That is our business. You're not supposed to talk about that. So I would say that the both persons need to try to understand each other. And I think that in communication, you have to, you have to look for win-win. And so that you shouldn't be at the guy's throat every time he goes down, he makes a mistake. And if he is making an effort to try to please you, you would realize that also. So I would think the best thing to do is to take Bishop Garway's suggestion that you try to communicate, and even when there is an agreement that you are not going to talk about certain things, there may be something historically in that person's life that prompts them, urges them on, that makes them feel good about sharing certain things about the family. That may not be you may think to be personal. Work with the person, give the person a second chance, because they're dealing with probably something cultural, something from the past that they need to overcome. So I would say don't throw away the relationship because of such a simple issue that people can find maturity in time.
Sister Seneca.
Hi, Dr. Sutherland, how are you?
Yes. Do you want to comment on this one, or we go to the other one?
Go to another question because I didn't hear that question.
Got you. Understood. Okay, so second issue. I am getting these accusatory statements with no merit. The impact, there is loss of trust on both sides. Resolution, there has been no resolution. So for those of you now joining us, we're presenting scenarios, case studies, questions from the participants over the last few months. We've been doing direct instruction on relationships and, how we do good for the gospel, how we use our relationships to minister to our partners and our families. Tonight, we're addressing scenarios that you have submitted, and we are guessing if this was submitted by a male or a female, and then we're going to allow our panelists to respond to those situations. So my second issue, there are accusatory statements being made against me with no merit. This is causing a loss of trust on both sides. And in terms of a resolution, there has been no resolution. So I need your advice. In the chats, can you tell me, am I male or am I female? Okay. There's another guess. So this question was submitted by a female. Pastor Griffith, I'm going to come to you first on this one.
Again, we have trouble. Who likes to know that someone is telling lies on them? Nobody does, and we have a situation where I take it the partner keep accusing you of things that it's definitely not true. Yes, it is fact that we have a trust problem. And I would have said it a while, and I keep saying that relationships has 4, maybe 5 fundamentals: caring, sharing, trust, the effort to understand, and respect. And if at this stage you are having that serious problem with trust, again, I would counsel that I don't see how you can get into the relationship that is meaningful if this fundamental pillar of a relationship is like that. So we have a serious situation here. I do not know if, like Pastor Henry earlier said, sometimes it is people's past experience that make them not trusting. If you had a partner that you could not trust and you keep suspecting this person, or maybe you know yourself what you have done and you're not projecting onto this partner. Whatever it is, the person who is not trusting the other person has a problem, because I'm getting the impression that there's no basis for the accusation. And I personally have a belief that if I suspect something, it is quite all right for me to suspect. But how dare me accuse some person for something I have no facts about? So that relationship is in crisis. I pause.
Invite any of the other panelists to respond.
Oh, I'll take it here. An accusation is only accusation if it's not substantiated. So I would want to, if my partner is accusing me of something, I'd want to sit down and get clarification. One of the things I did in a former place is I told my wife, as a senior pastor, if you feel that you're not communicating with me, please feel free to take up the phone and call any other pastor at my level to speak, and let's have a three-way, because I want to understand you. And one of the things that we have, one of the things that we know for fact is that men and women communicate at different levels, and therefore we use words, but we don't interpret it the same way. And many times we need a translator. Because, especially if you want your relationship to last, and I felt probably that was too wide, but so maybe I should have said somebody more in our group, and then later on I came to regret that. But because not everybody I found out is wise in handling that type of information. But I would want to know, explain to me to your satisfaction, because I am not marrying a mad person, and if my spouse is telling me that they feel okay, they're accusing me of something, love, communication, sex, money, I want to know, honey, what you mean, because as a man, I must love you as I love myself. So if you're not satisfied, please tell me. And if I cannot deal with it myself, let's go get some help. All right. And so I think in this case here, that person needs to really, again, I don't have the fullness of the situation here as I'm watching as number 10 in my statements here. You need to really hear the person, because you might be, what it is they're talking about, how important it is the priority issue, etc. And you really need to hear. If your relationship is important to you, then you want to hear what the person says, listen to what they say. Now, as I said, my wife speaks 5 languages. English is about her 4th or 5th language. You understand? So sometimes when we communicate, it is not, I understand the way she uses words may not always be the same exact way we use it on this side of the world. So one of the things I am very honest, if I have to ask her 1,500 times what you mean, I am going to ask you that, because I want to hear you. What she says to me is important, because what I miss can create a problem down the road. I'm hoping that she has the same answer. Because when they come from different cultures and different languages, you have these little things that happen. So even in the Caribbean, I think sometimes when we use words, etc., one man say laugh, lineman one say gaffing, different things like that. And so it depends again. And again, if it's heavy something, hear the person. And again, if you're not getting through, get some solid people that you can trust and sit down and talk. One thing I like to say is that if you see a guy running on the road by himself, he's an amateur. He's running on the road with a coach, a manager, a physiotherapist. He's a professional. So when it comes to the area of our relationships, etc., do not take it to the point where you just make heavy decisions on your own. That's if you can't find a single friend or a person who you could trust, then your life problem is much bigger than your spouse. Okay, I'll take it there for now. Doc?
Dr. King?
Yes, back to you.
Well, I'm still trying to understand the situation. If these two people are not yet married, and one is accusing the other of, making whatever accusations, and they're not based on facts, I would say to that person, you may want to think whether this is the right person for you to continue in relationship with, because that to me is a very unsteady foundation on which to begin a relationship that you hope will last. So if the two people are not yet married and these wild accusations are being made and they're unfounded, I would want to advise the other person who is being accused to think maybe 10 times before they marry that person. Now, if they're already in a marital relationship, a committed relationship, and the accusations are just flying, the only thing that person can do, to me, is to remain steadfast. You know that the accusations are not true. Continue to be your true and faithful self. And give that person no room to believe what they're hearing. You know, if they're suspicious about some of your movements or whatever, you may want to take them along with you as often as possible rather than, go out on your own or whatever. But like the pastor just said, if you have some basis for the accusation, and you may not realize that you're doing something negative, involve a trusted third person that you can get some professional counseling done between the two of you with that person. But I would hate to be in a situation where I'm being accused and it's a lie. I know it's a lie. And I'm explaining to my partner that you have no basis for this accusation. And if they continue making the same claims all the time, we would either have to seek professional counseling or come to a point where we agree to disagree, because that is not a healthy relationship. And it will eventually end up on the rocks if there's not professional help and the other person is not willing to, see the other person's point of view.
Yeah,
Two cannot walk together unless they are agreed. That's what the word of God says. So if there's going to be agreement, the two have to be able to walk together.
Thank you. I'm making my own notes. Thank you very much. And again, please feel free to add any comments or responses in the chat, both on YouTube and on Zoom. We're monitoring both chats this evening. So, third scenario, my spouse is never in the mood. And I'm going to add there for intimacy. Now I'm just no longer interested in continuing this relationship. What I've done in terms of the resolution or the solution, I've started working late hours just to avoid the person. So the issue, never in the mood. The impact, I am no longer interested in continuing the relationship. My solution, work late hours to avoid the person. Can you guess if I am a man or a woman to the participants this evening? Am I a man or am I a woman? If you guessed that I am a man, you are correct. Who wants to take this one first?
I guess that it was a man. So because women will not work late hours to avoid their spouse. I can tell you that. So that sounds like a male's problem.
Right.
Not being married myself, I would think that a lot will have to be based on what was your commitment from the get-go. If you enter a marital relationship where you really are committed to the vow of until death do us part, I think whenever you encounter problems, you will find a way to solve those problems, There are all kinds of professional counseling available to you, even on intimacy, how to be intimate. There are counselors who are, professionals qualified and certified in those areas. I believe that if you enter a marital relationship where you feel that there's always a way out, you will find a way out from any problem. But if you've entered a relationship where both persons are agreed, we are not going to end this relationship until death takes one of us, you will have to find a way to make the relationship work.
Mhm.
And sometimes it means going back to, where you started, going back to date nights or whatever, going back to making time for each other. Could it be too that in some relationships, the intimacy goes because the other person doesn't feel appreciated? They're not valued. They don't feel valued in that relationship. So there is a problem. There has to be some grounds why you started out being hot for each other, and now you don't even want to see each other.
Mhm.
And that did not happen overnight either. It happens gradually. You begin to get, distant from each other. You begin to perhaps go to functions without each other. Whatever, you let work, friends, church, whatever it is, get between the two of you. But I think if a couple starts out where they maintain dating each other even though they're married, I think a lot of people forget that once they're married, they forget about dating each other. And that's why professionals have suggested things such as date nights and weekends off where the two people get away together and so forth and so on, just as if they were starting the relationship again. But there is professional counseling. And for me, the bottom line is, if you believe that the marriage is until death do us part, you're going to work your problems out. But if you believe that, you know what, I can get out of this if it doesn't work for me, like how, you throw away clothes when you no longer want them, then you're going to find that opportunity in your marriage.
Thank you. Pastor
Never been in the mood, and I think we're talking sexually, again, is a very serious position to arrive at. The woman, as a man, right? So the woman may have a justifiable reason why she is not in the mood. It very much may have to do with her menopausal period, period as in where she's in the stage of life in which she's at. There may be other reasons. Yes, she may ain't let me no more because she finds the boy better than me, probably. But however the case is, it is one that needs immediate attention. And because a man's behavior is based on his experience. I mentioned the example of, for example, menopause, right? And what is clear is this couple needs to have a conversation. And if they cannot have a conversation with themselves, again, we come back to where we have to find some trusted person. Otherwise, we can see the relationship is already strained because the first assumption can be that the sister no longer is interested in me. All right? So who cares? I'm gonna go. I have no reason to go home. All right? So the relationship is already in trouble. And what keep coming up all the time is the gradual, these things don't normally happen overnight.
Mhm.
And somehow we need to learn and observe for when those deviations begin to occur. And And I like, for me, in my own relationship, I do not know that my wife and I do carry this silence over a long period or whatever. Let's pause and let's have that conversation. And I think that this couple has to urgently, because it's already bad, have to find time to talk. And I repeat, we need to be careful about those things that gradually accumulates. Again, I pause.
Okay, let me put a different angle to it, Doc. May I?
Yes, of course.
Because I said, like, when I was heavy into counseling in the early 90s, I said I would about 600 couples in about a 3-year period. So what I met is different angles, because I had one guy who I was talking to him after 2 years of marriage, and he had sexual relationship with his wife 3 times in 2 years. Didn't have a honeymoon, and he was not the only person I've had met that kind of problem. So there's some women who actually come into marriage and they cannot even what's the term? That consummate their relationship. Yes, thank you very much. So there's some people who actually have a traumatic problem, and the problem might have been they interfered before, or they may have been, it might be words or it might be touching. So something actually is in their mind. I had one lady who told me to have sex with her husband, she had to go and drink some alcohol and get herself drunk. You understand what I'm saying? Because she had a problem. She has a problem with penetration. So these are, and she wasn't touched. But she said no, she was never touched. Why? So some of these people, you have to go back and deal with certain types of you have to go back and deal with sometimes a traumatic. So it's something beyond what a husband could do. And sometimes you might need a professional counselor to deal with the issue, to actually go down into the past of the person and deal with the trauma. There are some people, again, too, when it comes to their love languages, etc., or the thing that turns them on more in a relationship is not physical touch. There's some people who only enjoy sex after they start, and they have a strange problem that the psychologists have identified, in the sense that once they get involved in it, they like the sex, but they never want to initiate the sex, or they never want that first starting issue. And it's in psychology today, and it's a strange thing. I can't remember what the terminology for it. So just remember, so it's not always simplistic. Yes, there's some people where the wife is not being romanced or she's not being taken care of, but there's some people, again, too, you may also have to do with healing from promiscuity, because the spirit, what we're finding out, the spirit of promiscuity, God, I had a term for it now. But many times people who have a lot of sex before marriage, after they get into marriage, they get very bored of having sex with one person, because they have been in, so that the husband or the wife pays for what the person did before marriage. And sometimes they will blame, if you're not a skilled counselor, to pick that up. Because sometimes what I've had people come to me, and what I realize is sometimes they try to use me as their official, the way they can say, okay, well, I even went to Bishop Garvey for counseling. They say, no, you didn't come here for counseling for the issue. You came to get a stamp to get out of your marriage. You understand? So I put the husband out, or I will do that and leave my church. So at least one church member I can think about immediately. 2, Terry, I can think about immediately. So I caught them. You understand what I'm saying? Because I could pick up, because after doing all this other counseling, you could realize this is something is off here about their conversation. They're already seeing a third person or something like that, and therefore they're now looking for a reason to get out. They're not really trying to heal the marriage.
Right.
So sometimes it's not always, as I'm saying, it's not always a simplistic thing. The simple view is you're not romancing the woman, so the woman not having sex with him. But it can be much deeper issues that are involved here. And as pastors, if we don't want to go in and prepare ourselves, there's some people in your church sometimes who have the gift of counseling, and sometimes they can help, or people who have studied. You can give them guidance to make sure they stay biblically. They give you some sort of report with an understanding of people who go see them. You would get back a report. But this issue is a very serious issue, because some of the women don't realize that how much of a man's ego is connected to his sexuality. That's why kings have so many wives. They don't have to worry about that. Even today, all right. And sometimes, again, the older women, they don't spend time teaching the younger women how to deal with their emotions and how to deal with certain things so that you don't use sex as a way to get back at your husband. And of course, the Bible says, submit to your husband, but the only dimension of submission that separates you from any other thing is the sexual relations. You understand? Because he could get a maid to cook and clean. He can get almost anything else excepting sexual relationship if he is a serious Christian. So therefore, and again, too often in the church, we don't address these situations publicly nor privately. And we have a lot of problems. That's why a lot of times men don't come to church. So their wife is coming to church, they're looking all holy, etc., etc. But when they go home, they're not fulfilling their prime and first responsibilities. You understand? They have a sexual ministry to their husband. You understand? If you don't do that, you open up the word of God for blasphemy. All right? So, and I could go on and on based on the guys who've come and spoken to me about this particular matter and personal experience. Human being. So,
Pastor Henry?
So I listen to the pastors, the wise men, and one of the things that is very fundamental to this problem is that oftentimes men do not take the time to study and to understand the sexual nature of a woman. Right? Someone rightly said that when it comes to sex and the male, he is like a piece of paper. And so the slightest flame that passes by him, he burns and he gets into heat. And in a while he's out. So the wife comes in from work and touches his hair and the flame is lit. But on the other hand, the guy says a woman is like a piece of log. It takes time, a long time, to get that log catch a fire. But when it does, it stays ablaze for a very long time. So that there are a lot of, when it comes to sex, there are a lot of women who, as the bishop says, they submit to their husbands and what have you. But after 5 minutes, they're still looking in the ceiling and the man is snoring. And so, and so you have to take the time to understand your sexual needs, and so foreplay for a woman is different to what is necessary for a man. And conversation, I would say to the men who are listening, conversation forms a part of that. You speak a lot, you talk a lot, you tell her how she looks and what have you and so on. She's not interested in the touch as much as you are. And so you need to understand that part of the whole thing of sexuality. And the sad thing about that is that even the word sex, there are some pastors, when they're doing marriage counseling, they're afraid to even mention the word. So our young people get into the thing and they're taking what they get from the television screens as a guide to operate their families. And as a result, families suffer because we are not given good Christian sound guidance on the matter.
Dr. Sutherland, if I may,
Yes.
you did say that the couple, they seem to have had a working relationship before,
Yes.
but then this coldness in intimacy has come in. So it seems to me that they had that passion and they had that chemistry at the beginning. But now it has dissipated over time. And again, I think it is because over time, a lot of carelessness has come into the relationship that they did not pay attention to. And it slipped and slipped until it's now, instead of being a little gap, it's now a wide chasm because they allowed it to, get away from them. And so I would say, again, at that point, you really have to be serious about whether you were in this for the long haul or not. If you were in it for the long haul, both persons are going to be understanding of each other and they're going to seek professional help, I would think, together. So that, and during that professional counseling, and I want to say that not all counseling is the same. All right. you really have to seek a professional that is that has been trained in that particular area. Okay. A regular church pastor counseling you on sexual matters may not work. You want to go to what they call sex coaches or whatever. They will delve and get to the bottom of the problem. If it's a medical problem, they will give you advice. They would recommend you to see whatever medical professional you need to see. If it's a psychological problem, but that psychological problem should have surfaced before if they had the hots for each other at the beginning, and now it has cooled to the point of distance. It tells me that something has happened in that marriage along the way. So a professional intimacy counselor would be able to help that couple pinpoint what started to happen. Because again, it didn't happen suddenly. It never happened suddenly. It's I call it carelessness. It's carelessness over time. So you have to be able to fix that. And that will only happen if both persons are in the relationship for the long haul.
And my last comment to that is, I trust that this is not spite or anger that is carrying on. In other words, an issue came up that was not resolved, and until that resolved, some people can say, very sorry. So that could also be a possibility.
Right. Okay, I don't see any comments or questions, so we will go to the next scenario. My spouse puts ministry before family, so it makes me feel like I'm not important. I'm not a priority. I feel like a single parent, and there isn't enough proper communication. We are lacking in this area. So the issue, ministry before family, the impact, I feel like I'm not important. I'm not a priority. I feel like a single parent, and we lack communication. My solution, I'm just shutting off and I'm doing everything by myself. Am I a man or am I a woman? Who wants to take this one first?
That's a woman.
That's a woman. Who wants to go first?
The Bible in 1 Timothy 5:8, I know that it was speaking about the idea of widows and the need to be able to take care of those who are truly widows and family, etc., etc. And Paul was arguing that people who have children and family, they should take responsibility for helping. But he also says that if a person does not provide for his house, the person is worse than an infidel. Now, it depends on how we want to apply that piece of scripture. But I remember reading a book I had years ago on a lonesome person. I never saw it again. It was about Rekindled. And here was this prominent church person. I don't think the person said he was pastor, but very prominent, respected person in the church, who literally did nothing to help his wife. Read everything, did everything else. And she would have cook, bathe the children, prepare food, and everything else. Until one day she looked to him and said, look, she let him know how she felt. And she said, look, I done. She said, I will not leave you, right? But I will not promise you that I will have any feeling. Now, that brought the crisis to a head. And in short, the husband got attention. The wife was heading towards a nervous breakdown, but they got the counseling and the relationship was, in fact, rekindled. Again, Paul said in 1 Timothy 3:4, he spoke in the context of a bishop, but we don't have to get blinded by the word bishop. But I like the word he says about one ruling your household well, managing your household well. Now, if you neglect your responsibility to your family, the time will come, well, I seem to be positive about it, when you can get disappointment at the church. When you are under stress at church and you have some person to go home to, when you would have worked hard with I remember going to a dentist it's not a dentist, she was a specialist, and she spent this long time with me talking about her mother, right? Who gives everything to the church, but the church don't treat her right. And this specialist was frustrated, and she cannot understand why her mother will keep going. I've heard children speak about how much they have sacrificed, mommy, daddy, take all these things and give to the church people. And you know what is bad? When the church people don't tend to treat mommy or daddy well. And I'm saying that when a minister, however you are, in ministry, and you forget your relationship with your family, you don't bring that balanced time. You set yourself up when your family become broken, the same people in the church who you've been giving your soul to. The truth is that they can quote the Bible. You can't manage your household well. You can't talk to me. You children are rebels. They're criminals. Your wife left you. She horny you. Daddy, you are in trouble. So I think that loving your wife it involves spending time to your wife, spending time with your children, and create that balanced ministry. So that partner finds themselves in a problem, and I believe that they're outside the will of God. It is time for them to come to their senses and create that necessary balance for them for their own good. I pause.
Dr. King, Bishop Garrett.
I think I touched this before.
Yes.
Or putting ministry
Ministry before family.
Well, it's interesting because it depends. Putting ministry before family. It depends on the stage of your family life. So for me now, I have grandchildren and all these things like that. So my kids have grown up. All right. Now, even the context of your spouse, etc. Before I married my spouse, I found out what was her desires, what were her dreams, etc. And my job is to facilitate that. One of the things that may happen here is that now, if I deal with directly what I'm seeing in front of me, there's lack of communication. All right. And the lack of communication could be on two sides. It could be that the guy is not including his wife into his life, or he's not helping her in that which makes her fulfilled. Because if your spouse is fulfilling what they're doing, then it's very easy for them to help you in what you're doing. So whatever, she told me what her dreams was. My job, make all the finances available. She needs to get somewhere. I will get somebody to go with her. And I said it came from Timbuktu. And I said he tried to fulfill her goal, etc. Now, on the other hand, if you want to talk to a person and get that person to communicate with you, you can't just be running on the person and just be quarreling. You got to be very careful concerning that. Especially men. Men have this thing called an inbuilt mute button. So a man, if your tone is off, we could shut you down watching you. You think you're talking to us and we're not even hearing you. You understand? You can be saying fire, fire. We could be saying yes, darling, yes, darling. You understand? So you have to be very, very careful when it comes to a man. Anytime you want a man to hear you, speak softer and slower if it's important. Just remember those two things. Softer, slower. And it tends to get his attention. Next thing is, men are not as smart as women when it comes to relationship. If you have a need that is unmet in your marriage as a woman, explain to your husband like a 5-year-old and tell him what to do. Initially, when he does it, it will not be romantic. So you say, honey, I would love to have some flowers now and then. Now, please tell him which flower, because he might pass through the cemetery and collect something. All right, or jump the neighbor fence. So, and at first, when he brings what you tell him, it may not seem romantic. So again, tell him, ever so often, honey, or at certain kid, man, we have to train this man. You see, if this is your man, so if you train him for 2 years, 3 years, and then he does it for 40 years down the road, you'll be very happy. You understand? Because remember, he would have seen certain things in his parental relationship, or did not see certain things in his parental relationship. So when two coming together, there has to be a clear-cut communication in a non-threatening fashion. And then secondly, you have to show that person your willingness to meet their needs. You understand? So try to encourage them. Honey, is there any of your needs that are not being met at this point in time? Are you feeling? Because if your husband feels that you are in your corner, then he will stick in his corner, especially if he's not a person trained or matured as a believer. So what you're going to find is two strangers living in a house. And sometimes that is what he may have seen in his parental relationship. So communicating in a non-threatening fashion, in a very gentle way, and be prepared with a man to say it. So Jesus said, what, 70 times 7? You have to do that because this is your husband. And if he doesn't know that this is what you like, he doesn't know. Because there's so many carry flowers to, they throw the flowers in the corner. They're not interested in that. You know, some women like money. Some women like time. Some women like touching. Some women like being acts of service. Some women want words of affirmation. Honey, I love it when you speak well to me, etc. Tell your husband what builds you up as an individual, and do it many times. And then you're going to find it pays out in the long run. You know, men are strange. You know, if we want sex, we'll go bathe, you know. we do things that indicate, you know, women, however, sometimes, I don't know what, in the movies, they tend to have this idea where the lover, you know, unconsciously knows what the woman wants. That's not reality, you know. So you have to work with your husband with the presumption that he does not know and that he wants to know. But if you tell it to him over and over, eventually he will get to know. So I'm hoping that helps.
Again, from my perspective, 9 times out of 10, when I hear people complaining about their spouses, it makes me wonder, what did that person do in the courtship period? How is it that once that courtship period has now been sealed in a committed marriage, people don't continue doing the same things? Doesn't make sense to me. When you learn to drive a car, you didn't, once you got your license to go on the road, did you stop doing the same things that you did when you were learning to drive the car? No, you continue to follow the same rules and you drive that car, right? One would say, yes, after a while, the driving becomes more or less automatic. But even if you are an accomplished driver, you will find that you jump into a different vehicle, you still have to remind yourself of certain rules and, you know, regulations, how to get that car going and so forth and so on. So I want to believe that when people get married, they should not forget what it took to win that person in the first place and keep on doing some of those things so that the marriage can remain fresh. The other thing that I would caution people getting married today, in my parents' time, usually it was the man that went to work and the woman stayed at home and she was a stay-at-home housewife. You don't get that in today's world. Both people are working. And if both people are working, then there has to be consideration of that in terms of housework, you know, church work, etc., etc. You have to understand that both people have limitations to their time. And therefore, for it to work, both people will have to cooperate to get the children managed, ferreted to and from school. In the case of older couples, if they're minding their grandchildren or whatever, they have to still, you know, build that time in. But whatever you do, that time has to be divided equally or fairly, let me say
Fairly.
fairly, because it may not be equally, but fairly, to satisfactorily meet the needs of each other. You can't be all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy and Jill a dull girl. So you have to be able to, you know, to blend the two and help where you can help so that your spouse can have time for you and they're not always tired. They're not always frustrated. They're not always miserable. I think sometimes men don't understand that women carry a lot of frustrations when they have to manage every single thing while he works. But she's working also. So that puts an additional strain on her and it could lead to burnout on either side. And it leads to a miserable relationship. You know, I'll say this one thing. There's a reason, I always say that Jesus Christ is our best example. There is a reason that Jesus in his ministry on earth never got married. So because he never got married, he could give himself 24/7 to the ministry, right? And even then he took time to rest. There were times when he said to his disciples, push the boat off and take me to the other shore so that I could get some rest from the crowds pressing in all the time. So understand that as a human being, you don't have the time that Jesus had, even if you could be the most dedicated minister. If you have a spouse and you have children or grandchildren, you have to give way to making time for them. Otherwise, you're going to come to the end of the road, maybe even more suddenly than you think. And you're going to find yourself wanting. Your children don't like you because you didn't give them sufficient time. Your spouse can't stand you because you didn't give him or her sufficient time. And you've created a mess because you are not an example either for the congregation that you're serving. Because if you can maintain your spouse and your family relationships, how can you come and preach in church and tell me how to live? You're not an example for me. So you have to be balanced so that your congregation will see you modeling balance and know how to do it as well.
So let me chime in here, Dr. Sutherland, because I think that on this particular issue, a very fundamental issue is always missing from courtship. It seemed as though it was missing from courtship. And so the two individuals have gotten into a relationship and somehow after a while, the lady is complaining that the guy is too involved in ministry. Well, what was your mission? What was your defined mission in courtship? Both of you, what were your defined mission? Did you agree? Did you have an agreement that we are going to be involved? We are going to give ourselves to ministry, to the ministry of people? Very often not. Very often, and very often people are get into marriage and the counselor does not suggest to them that they need to define for themselves their purpose, their goals, their values, and have it written out so that the day somebody backslides on that written agreement, it can be brought up and say, listen, you're backsliding. Without that, you can't complain. It is like getting into a car, for those who know Port of Spain, into a taxi in Port of Spain. And you tell the driver, we are going east. It just happens so that when you get to Uriah Butler intersection, one person says, I want to go to Arima. And the other person says, I want to go to San Fernando. And that is what happens with marriages. So that for the short period, you're going well from Port of Spain to Butler until you get to that intersection in life where you want to fulfill your purpose, where you want to fulfill your vision. And then you're faced with the question by Amos, with the Amos question, can two walk together except they be agreed? And the truth is, if they had discussed with each other, a person who is given to ministry, he would understand that, yes, I must also be given to ministering to my children. He would not be as foolish as I was when I was young into ministry, who would spend so many more hours with people and not aligning it with, my family. But thank God I was married to a woman who had the same vision, the same desire to want to help people. But if the woman is just about having a different vision in life, a different purpose in life, and somehow is not the same about the ministry as the husband, and she just see the husband as a man who is supposed to go and preach on a Sunday morning, come back home and do what he has to do and what have you, like, that's it. Then they're going to run into problems. So I would suggest that if you haven't as yet and you're having problems, before you deal with that problem, start to talk about your vision, your purpose, and decide on one for the family, one that both of you can agree on as to where you are going, so that you can allocate time and everything else that the other speakers have spoken about based on that mission that you have for your lives.
And I would add a little stop here by saying every Christian, male or female, and let's take in the context of spouses, have to realize that we have a duty to our relationships. The food got cooked, the walls will get painted, the yard will get swept, and consider both ministry. Too many of us within the church forget that we do ministry to our families too.
Amen to that, Pastor Griffith.
Yeah, that was
Agreed.
good.
That's the major complaint I hear from women and men whose spouses are in ministry.
And again, I said, if one person is in ministry and the other person isn't, and when I say in ministry here, I'm not talking about in the office of the minister, but one person's mind is in ministry and the other person's is not in ministry or in the same place, you're going to have these conflicts. And so the key is that both people don't get married to somebody. And if you're going around with somebody, don't get married to somebody because you like the person, because you love the person, and you're attracted to the person. Make sure that you're going in the same direction. Make sure that you have the same values. Make sure you have the same ideals for your life, for your family. If you don't, be friends. Continue to be friends and good friends, and forget that marital relationship.
So it's already, would you believe it's already 8:35? We're going to pause tonight, but our panelists are going to be back next week. But I think we got a number of wisdom nuggets this evening. Trusted and competent counsel, communication, or I might say over-communicate with your partner, address past trauma, commitment, aka till death do us part, keep dating and know each other's love languages, pay attention to the little things, be careful not to address carelessness, speak softly and slowly, cooperation, have a vision or mission for your marriage. And don't forget, deal with things in the embryonic stage, nip things in the bud. And don't forget the Amos question. Can two walk together unless they agree? Ladies and gentlemen, this is just part one of us addressing your Q&A based on the series, the various series we did this year on relationships, on communications, on addressing conflict in marriage, in relationships. What I'm going to do is I'm going to allow each of our panelists to give a closing. This is just a comma of a closing statement to the boundaries and barriers questions we had today. And then I'll ask Pastor Henry to wrap it all up for us. Thank you to those of you joining us on YouTube as well for being here, and to those of you joining us on Zoom. I am Sasha Sutherland. I'll see you next week. Panelists, over to you. Closing statements. Pastor Griffith, I'm going to come to you first.
My closing words are, we work and then we be tired. And all those who we work with forget us over time. And the only person we have or should have is our family. Relationships are extremely important, and I speak specifically to those between our families. I think it is our families that help give us perspective. And it is extremely important that through our course, we find time to do everything to facilitate that pleasant relationship. I hope that we keep on learning.
Dr. King?
I would say that for those who are contemplating marriage, find out as much as you can about each other before you enter into marriage. And for those who are already married, keep your love relationship alive by doing what you did to catch the spouse in the first place. And I don't even want to use the word catch, but to keep on doing what you did to woo that person in the first place. And remember that you are your brother's keeper. So if you're married, you are the keeper of your spouse. Your spouse is your keeper. And when you stand before your maker, you want to be able to say, this is the man or this is the woman that you gave me, and I've brought them along with me to the kingdom.
Bishop Gary.
Well, in Luke chapter 17, Jesus said, offenses have need but must come. So one of the things I did for me is I prepared and I steeled myself, and I kind of look forward to what are possible troubles I could meet. I looked at the person. I said, okay, people said this about the person. I'm not seeing it, but I'll take this into consideration. This I see. This I'll have to work with, because you don't get a marry. People think you get a perfect spouse. I don't believe that. I believe the Bible says you wash the wife with the water of the word. Therefore, you look for a teachable, adjustable person. That's the most important thing. And so you look for those things, and when problems come, the first person I start praying about is myself. That's what Jesus taught us to do. Then Matthew chapter 5, Jesus always addressed problems from the point of the offended persons first. So bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, pray for them that lie about you. And if we do that, we're going to find out we're going to approach our spouses less likely with a nuclear bomb when a matter needs a knife or a scalpel. So it's important for us to understand problems are normal, understand? And these are the things that make you champions. God will use your relationship to develop his relationship with you. And therefore, talk to God when problems turn up. Thank you.
Thank you. And Pastor Henry.
Pastor Francis is online with us. Pastor Francis, nice having you. Trust you'll join our session next week as we continue the discussion on this topic. On answering these questions, we had a number of them. We sent out the survey, and we had probably about 40-something responses. So we just did a few tonight, but we look forward to them. One of the families in the Bible that has been intriguing me over the past few weeks has been the family with the prodigal son. And that is so intriguing. Here it is, the young man left his home, took what was his, and squandered it. And I began to wonder, why is it the father did not send his servants to look for his son? Why is it the father didn't go out there and demand that his son return home? And somehow, it seems to me that the way Jesus told the story, that the son in his difficulties had to come to his senses, had to recognize where he was. And when he did, he returned home. When he returned to his home, he didn't hear, "I did tell you so." You see what I was telling you all the time. But he met a father who placed a robe around him, give him a new robe, a new ring, ownership, kill the fatted calf. This, my son, was lost, but is found. If we could treat our family members like that father, not be judgmental, trying to be like God, but rather to be spiritual. I should say, let me take back that. Not to be judgmental, trying to be like Satan, but to be like God, who gives us the opportunity to go astray, to do what we want. And when we come to our senses, to welcome us back into his arms. Some of us may have children who find themselves in that situation. And I want to say to you this evening, when they come to their senses, when they come back home, receive them gladly. You have been praying for them, receive them back into your arms. Give them what they didn't have, what they have taken, give them more, because God is a God of abundance. And love you all, and see you next Saturday evening at 7:30. Those who joined us for the first time, we are glad to have you. I have a good friend from Barbados here who I've been talking with. I know she had brought some of her friends with us, Sister Boy, nice having you. Disciple Shaman, she loves to be called by. Nice having you with us. And all those who are joining us, thank you for being with us. Join us for Real Talk Family Life next Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Dr. Sutherland, Pastor Griffith, Bishop Galway, Dr. King, all the Lord's blessing be upon you. And thank you for supporting the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have a pleasant evening all.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Okay, Doc. Okay,
No,
so
Good night.
good night, everybody. Doc, you let
Yes,
us
good night. Good night. Good night.
let us know how we know who's on next week.
but you